to our people.
The Constituency Development Fund (CDF) remains a beacon of hope and progress for communities.
We all have that one friend, always by your side for the big moments and ready to assist. He's always got his eyes on the prize and his heart in the right place. Where would we be without our BFFs? This season, enjoy all 380 Premier League games with your BFF Go TV. Watch.
You don't need to suffer from load shedding anymore. Liveltech is here to save the day. Imagine this. You're in the middle of an important task and boom, power cut. Frustrating, right? Well, not anymore. Introducing Liveltech, your go-to for advanced energy storage solutions. With Liveltech, you can store electricity and use it whenever you need it. Homes, schools, businesses, Liveltech powers them all. Our commitment to quality is unmatched, backed by a 10-year warranty. Picture this: happy families, productive businesses, and uninterrupted power supply. That's the Liveltech promise. So, why worry about power cuts? Choose Liveltech and embrace a future of energy independence. Contact us today to learn more. Liveltech, your trusted solar experts.
This Friday, the Minister of Finance and National Planning, Dr. Stombeko Musokotwane, will unveil the 2025 national budget to Parliament. This event will be carried live on Parliament Radio and Parliament Television. You can also utilize our Facebook page, the National Assembly of Zambia, and our YouTube platform. Parliament Radio and Parliament Television, bringing Parliament closer to you.
Parliamentary proceedings are today, Wednesday, 25th September 2024. I'm Claudette as a journalist.
Good afternoon, and my name is Matimba Mkoa. On sign language interpretation, we are joined by Chola Kauma and Jason Manda. We go straight into looking at business that was considered on the floor of the House yesterday, Tuesday, 24th September 2024.
Absolutely, Madam Speaker did make 3 announcements. In the first one, she acquainted the House with the presence in the Speaker's members Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defense and Security, and staff from the Namibian, that's the National Assembly of Namibia. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the National Assembly of Zambia, warmly welcome the distinguished guests to the National Assembly.
In the second announcement, Madam Speaker recognized the presence in the public gallery of students from Eagles Nest School in Lusaka District. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the National Assembly of Zambia, warmly welcomed the visitors to the National Assembly.
And in the last announcement, Madam Speaker did recognize the presence in the public gallery of pupils and teachers from Lusaka West School in Lusaka District. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the National Assembly of Zambia, warmly welcomed the visitors to the National Assembly. So those were the 3 announcements that were made by Madam Speaker yesterday.
After that, the House went on to consider questions for oral answer numbers 16 to 17, understanding order 80.
Thereafter, there was a resumption of debate on the President's address. Thanks of this assembly be recorded for its exposition of public policy contained in the President's address.
And we saw members of Parliament debating to this motion. This motion was moved by Kankoyo Member of Parliament, Mr. Hudson Mabeta, and it was seconded by Ron Member of Parliament, Mr. Joe Ochoye. And so the House did adjourn yesterday accordingly at 17:50 hours. And so this is business that was considered on the floor of the House yesterday, Tuesday, 24th September 2024.
Time now to look at business that is going to be considered on the floor of the House today, Wednesday, 25th September. We do expect some announcements, if there will be any, and a notice of motion. Her Honor, the Vice President is going to move a motion that Standing Orders 24, 27, and 87 of the National Assembly of Zambia Standing Orders 2024 be suspended to enable the House to sit up to 20-30 hours on Thursday, 26th September 2024, and further to enable the House to sit from 14-15 hours until business has been concluded, and to omit the Vice President's question time from the order paper on Friday, 27th September 2024.
On the order paper, after that, we have urgent matters without notice. We also expect the House to consider 2 questions for oral answer under Standing Order 80. After that, we expect Chiluvi, Member of Parliament, Mr. Mlenga Fube, to move a private member's motion, urging the House that in order to ascertain the standards of living in the country, this House urges the government to establish a poverty data line.
Have a resumption of debate. That's resumption of debate on the President's address, and thereafter the House is expected to adjourn. But as we wait for the Speaker's procession, we'll go through some of the questions that will be considered on the floor of the House today. Question 18 will come from Mr. S. Mwamba of Kasama Central, and she will ask the Minister about 5 questions.
In the first part of the question, she wants to find out what the progress on the rehabilitation works on the Chisamba Falls hydroelectric power station in Kasama district was as of March 2024. In part B, whether the loan agreement signed between ZESCO Limited and the Development Bank of Germany in 2016 was still subsisting as of March 2024. In part C of the question, how much power the plant was generating as of March 2024, and also who the contractor of the project is. And in part E of the question, she wants to find out what the estimated time frame for the completion of the project is.
We also expect Mr. Hamwato of Pemba to ask the Minister of Agriculture what measures the government is taking to promote irrigation schemes countrywide, whether the government has any plans to create a national irrigation agency, if so, when the plans will be implemented, and lastly, if there are no such plans, why. So those are the 2 questions. Oral answer under Standing Order number 80 that will be considered on the floor of the House. And just now we await for the Speaker's procession to make its way into the chamber, as we now interest you to live pictures from the chamber. Until then, pleasant viewing.
Honorable members of parliament, Madam Speaker,
Tendency of Zambia, proud and free, land of work and joy in unity, victors in the struggle for our rights. We want freedom's fight, oh, one, strong and free. Africa is our own motherland, fashioned with and blessed by those who blend. Let us all our people join as one, brothers under the sun, oh, one, strong and free. One land and one nation is our cry. Dignity and peace in Zambia's sky, like a noble eagle in its flight. Zambia, praise to thee, oh, one, strong and free. Praise be to God, praise be, bless our great Zambia, Zambia, Zambia. Green and we stand under the flag of our land. Zambia, praise to thee, oh, one, strong and free.
Prayer. Almighty God, who in your infinite wisdom and providential goodness has appointed the offices of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to consider with your abundant favor us, your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to the performance of such important responsibilities in this land. Let your blessing descend upon us here in Parliament assembled, and grant that we may, as in your presence, treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation, in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country, and of those whose interests you have committed to our church. Amen. Honorable members, I have 3 announcements to make. The first one is, honorable members, I wish to recognize the presence in the public gallery of pupils and teachers from St. Teresa SMA Trust School in Lusaka District. On behalf of the National Assembly of Zambia, I warmly welcome our visitors in our midst. Thank you. You may take your seats. The second announcement, honorable members, I wish to recognize the presence in the public gallery of students from Zikas University in Lusaka District. On behalf of the National Assembly of Zambia, I warmly welcome our visitors in our midst. You may take your seats. Thank you. The last announcement, honorable members, I wish to recognize the presence in the public gallery of pupils and teachers from Georgetown School in Lusaka district. On behalf of the National Assembly of Zambia, I warmly welcome our visitors in our midst. You may take your seats. Thank you. Notice of motion, Her Honor the Vice President.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that Standing Orders 24, 27, and 87 of the National Assembly of Zambia Standing Orders 2024 be suspended to enable the House sit up to 30 hours on Thursday, 26th September 2024, and further to enable the House to sit from 15 hours until business has been concluded, and to omit the Vice President's question time from the order paper on Friday, 27th September 2024.
The question is that Standing Orders 24, 27, and 87 of the National Assembly of Zambia, Standing Orders 2024, be suspended to enable the House to sit up to 30 hours on Thursday, 26th September 2024, and further to enable the House to sit from 15 hours until business has been concluded, and to omit the Vice President's question time from the order paper on Friday, 27th September 2024. Any debate? Her Honor, the Vice President.
Madam Speaker, the House will recall that when I presented the business statement for the period 17th to 27th September 2024, I indicated that the motion of thanks to the President's address would be debated for 7 sitting days, of which 5 days would be allocated to the backbench, while 2 days would be allocated to the executive. The 7 days, Madam Speaker, will lapse on Thursday, 26th September 2024. And in order for the executive to adequately explain many policy and socio-economic issues contained in the President's speech, and to respond to concerns raised by members from the backbench, it is only fair that the House extends the time of adjournment from 19 hours, which is provided for by Standing Order 27, to 30 hours. Madam, it is a practice of the House to allow the Honorable Minister responsible for finance to present the national budget on a Friday afternoon. However, Standing Orders 24 and 27 of the National Assembly of Zambia Standing Orders 2024 stipulate that the House shall sit from 09 hours to 13 hours on Fridays, while Standing Order 87 provides for the Vice President's question time on the same day. Madam Speaker, it is with this in mind that I move this motion to suspend the mentioned standing orders so that the House can sit at 15 hours on Friday, 27th September 2024, until business is concluded, and also to omit the Vice President's question time from the order paper. This is in order to continue with the practice of enabling the Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning to present the 2025 national budget at 14:15 hours. Madam Speaker, this is a procedural and non-controversial motion. I therefore urge all honorable members of this august House to support it. Madam Speaker, I beg to move.
Thank you. As this is a procedural motion, I'll allow only one debater from my left. The Honorable Member for Ron, you have indicated. Honorable Member for Kantanshi then.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much for this opportunity. And indeed, it's a non-controversial motion, but Madam Speaker, just to remind the executive, as you are aware, on Friday, the national budget will be presented. A lot of questions are coming from the people of Zambia. Is the budget going to be able to be good enough to create jobs, cut the cost of living, respond to our electricity crisis? I just thought from this side that as the executive is refining the budget, they clearly put across to the Minister of Finance, as you are aware, all of us are members of Parliament representing people. These are the questions that we are facing. On agriculture, I would like to urge the executive to clearly spell out on this e-voucher and the direct input. The direct input, Madam Speaker, is what we are going to support because we know that the farming we need at least 2 farming seasons to build up our maize stock in this country and for us to have cheaper mealie meal. If we are going to go with emphasis on e-voucher, where the farmer is going to have options of groundnuts or soybeans and so on, we are going to lose the spot. And just to remind the executive that this, obviously the 2025 budget, is going to encompass or spell out how the future will be for this government in 2026. So with that said, Madam Speaker, I know and I'm confident that all of us here knows that the stakes are extremely high, but we are all going through the same, as we are representing the same people with similar challenges. So I'm confident that we are going to hear a budget that is going to create the opportunities that we are all looking for and not just statements. That said, Madam Speaker, I would like to support this non-controversial motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I honor the Vice President winding up debate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the support of the entire House, support to this motion, which is really suspending standing orders so that the budget could be presented according to our tradition. I know the honorable member has spoken. I think this motion maybe hold the fire because the budget is coming and then you can speak to it. You can continue to think of what to do. But let me thank all of you members for supporting the motion. Thank you very much.
I put the question. The question is that Standing Orders 24, 27 and 87 of the National Assembly of Zambia Standing Orders 2024 be suspended to enable the House to sit up to 20-30 hours on Thursday, 26 September 2024, and further to enable the House to sit from 14-15 hours until business has been concluded, and to omit the Vice President's question time from the order paper. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is resolved in the affirmative. Urgent matters without notice. The Honorable Member for Ron.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the urgent matter without notice that I wish to raise is directed to the Minister of Information and Technology, and in brackets, Minister of Home Affairs and Internal Security.
You may proceed, Honorable Member.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it has been embarrassing, and of late it is becoming more embarrassing to your honorable members of parliament seated here and some top government officials outside there. Madam Speaker, nearly every one of us has had his either Facebook hacked or a WhatsApp hacked by scammers, who in turn are sending messages to various people asking for money, pretending that it is your honorable members who are asking for such favors. Madam Speaker, in turn, people who have been able to fall prey to this are now sending phone calls to your honorable members of parliament, telling them that they gave you money which you asked for. Madam Speaker, it is indeed embarrassing to your honorable members of parliament. Is the honorable Minister of Information and Technology, and in brackets, the honorable Minister of Information and of Home Affairs and Internal Security, in order to allow this embarrassing situation, Madam Speaker, to continue where your honorable members are now moving with their heads low. I seek your indulgence, Madam Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Ron. The issue of scammers, I think, is not only affecting the honorable members of parliament. I think it's affecting everyone. Even ordinary citizens are being, the phones are being scammed, and messages are being sent to people that have lost my phone. Please send Airtel money to this number, when in fact not. It's a criminal activity, actually, which should not be allowed to continue. Now, in terms of who can come and render a statement here, the Minister of Home Affairs maybe can come and explain what measures are being taken by ZICTA and other agencies to ensure that this scamming is brought to an end. So the Honorable Minister can come to the House on Tuesday next week. We're not sitting. Oh, sorry. Okay, when we finish, after 10 days, after 10 sitting days, the Honorable Minister, maybe it will be too late again. The Minister will have to make some consultations, so tomorrow might not be appropriate. And we can't have that statement on Friday, so he can come when with the first sitting that we are going to have after the analysis of the budget. Then he can deliver a ministerial statement on that. Thank you very much, Honorable Member for Ron. Honorable Member for Nyimba. Please, Honorable Members, bear in mind that from tomorrow, Friday, is the budget presentation, and we won't be sitting for another 10 sitting days, because the honorable members will be working in their committees to analyze the budget. The Honorable Member for Nyimba.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my urgent matter without notice goes to the Minister of Agriculture. Madam Speaker, you may know that, or I think it's in the public domain, that the President promised the Zambian, in fact he didn't promise, said he has given us, as Zambian, especially the peasant farmers, the small-scale farmers, he has raised the money from 400,000 to 1.2 billion. Now the question to the Minister of Agriculture, Minister, now that the money for agriculture support program has been increased, are we going to see the number of beneficiaries increase from the current? Let me pick a practical example of my constituents, from 13,000 to somewhere, because you know that like Nyimba, we need about 32,000 people should benefit. Now at 13,000. Are we seeing the number rising from 13,000 maybe to 20,000 or 18,000? Or are we seeing any change, or not seeing any change, even after increasing the agriculture support program by 300%? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Nyimba. I suggest that you put in a question. Then it will be considered and it will be handled at the appropriate time when the House is sitting. Thank you. The Honorable Member for Solwezi East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. The matter I wish to raise is directed to the Minister of Home Affairs and Internal Security. Madam Speaker, the Zambian nation just woke up today only to read something that is very, very shocking, disturbing, and quite alarming. In this paper, Madam Speaker, Daily Mail, we fight H.H. Lungu. Madam Speaker, this is a very, very serious statement coming from the mouth of a former president. Okay? In fact, here it says, ex-president says he is ready to use outside judicial system. And Madam Speaker, the Honorable Minister of Internal Affairs is seated there quietly. Is the President of the Republic of Zambia, Dr. Hakainde Hichilema, safe? When we actually saw the former president even demonstrating at Kamwingilamo, meaning I'll fight physically. And this former president is well known for use of violence. Madam Speaker, I want to find out from the Honorable Minister of Internal Security, is the president safe? Madam Speaker,
to make a comment, but if there is anything that's wrong that has been done, I'm sure the relevant law enforcement agencies are watching, and if there is need to call anybody for questioning, then it's up to them to make a decision. I'm sure they are following the events, so let's not involve ourselves in what people want to say at some rally. So we will leave it in the hands of the appropriate law enforcement agencies. The Honorable Member for Chama North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My urgent matter without notice is directed to the Minister of Labour and Social Security.
You may proceed, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker, the mining sector is very, very critical to economic development because it accounts for more than 70% of our foreign exchange earnings. Madam Speaker, there is a worrying trend happening at Mopani copper mines by the new owners of the mine. What is happening is that many Zambians are being displaced by foreign workers, which undermines the policy of Zambianization. Madam Speaker, this has caused discontent and the great concern from the trade unions in the mining industry that if this matter is not addressed as quickly as possible, it may lead to industrial disruption in the mining industry, meaning that will affect copper production. Is the Minister of Labour and Social Security in order to keep quiet without coming to this August House and update the nation why the government is allowing foreign nationals to take our jobs at the expense of Zambians? I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member for Chama North. I will suggest that you submit a question which can be dealt with by the Honorable Minister of Labour and Social Security. The Honorable Member from Mpika.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. My urgent matter without notice is directed at the Minister of Agriculture.
You may proceed, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, government has 1 million farmers on the Farmer Input Support Program. However, Madam Speaker, in preparation for the 2024-2025 farming season, camp officers and CAC chairpersons are going round across the country telling farmers that government has weaned off those who have been on the program for some time. So, Madam Speaker, I therefore seek your indulgence that the Minister of Agriculture clarifies this information for the benefits of the farmers. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member from Pika. Again, I will advise that you submit a question which can be handled by the Honorable Minister of Agriculture. So we go to the next item, questions for oral answer, understanding order 80. The Honorable Member for Kasama Central.
Question number 18, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honorable Member is asking the Ministry of Energy a question in 5 parts. In A, what the progress on the rehabilitation works of the Shishimba Falls hydroelectrical power station in Kasama district was as of March 2024. In B, whether the loan agreement signed between ZESCO Limited and Development Bank of Germany in 2016 was still subsisting as of March 2024. How much power the plant was generating as of March 2024. In D, who the contractor for the project is. And E, what the estimated time frame for the completion of the project is. Madam Speaker, our response is as follows. In A, the following is the progress on the project. 1, despite the financing documents being signed in 2016, rehabilitation works have not yet started. 2, the project stalled in October 2019 to an appeal that was made to the ZPPA by the losing bidder for the project consultants. Arising from this procurement process, which was cancelled in 2020, the government retendered in 2022. The consultant was appointed in February 2023. The consultant has completed designs and specifications and is now working with ZESCO in finalizing the project, in finalizing the request for proposal documents for the construction of works. Pre-qualification for contractors for civil works and electromechanical works has been completed. Geotechnical investigation for the project has been carried out. The draft tender documents for both the civil and electromechanical works have been prepared and are under review. Works on the final tender documents are in progress. Madam Speaker, in B, the The original financing structure was 11.5 million euros as a grant and 32 million US dollars as a loan. In 2018, the loan component was converted into 30 million euros grant, bringing it to a total of 41.5 million euros grant. This agreement is still subsisting. In C, this agreement is still subsisting. In C, as of March 2024, the power station was generating 1.6 megawatts. On average, out of installed capacity of 6 megawatts. This particular project aims to rehabilitate and upgrade the power station to 15 megawatts. In D, the contractor for the project is yet to be procured. In E, the project is scheduled to be completed in 2027. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. Supplementary questions? The Honorable Member for Kasama Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for such an elaborate answer. But then yet, it's very disappointing, a project that started in 2016. Right now, we are battling with load shedding, and yet we are still not making any progress. Minister, my question is that the financing of 41.5 million euros is still subsiding. Now, the question is, what other conditions are attached to this particular project? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Member. As we are standing now, there are no other conditions apart from trying to negotiate for the extension, because this project was supposed to come to completion by December 31st, 2024. So we are negotiating for extension for this project. The rest of the issues have already been negotiated. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Nkana.
Thank you, Minister of Darkness. Oh, sorry, Minister of Energy. The challenge we have of load shedding, I think you are now familiar with, is very dire. And this appears to be like a low-hanging fruit because funding is already provided for by our cooperating partners. What then is the biggest challenge to upgrade that facility to the capacity of 15 megawatts? I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Member. Madam Speaker, like I have stated, is that there was agreement to look at the time frame that is almost coming to an end, and at the same time, there was a delay by the losing bidder who kept the losing bidder who Madam Speaker, the losing bidder appealed and the process resulted to be delayed, and hence this delayment. As we are talking, Madam Speaker, the project is aiming at, one, to rehabilitate and also 2, to upgrade it from 6 megawatts to 15 megawatts, which will add to the long-term solution of the energy sector crisis. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Chama North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think my question has been overtaken by the Nkana Member of Parliament, because I wanted to find out what would be the installed generation capacity after the upgrade of the Chishimba Falls hydropower project. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kasama Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, as you are currently working on the contracts, there's the issue of local benefits. Chishimba Falls, a heritage site which is in Kasama Central constituency, is in need of corporate social responsibility activities. I would like to find out what you have earmarked for the particular community at Chishimba Falls and the surrounding area. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Member. The hope is that we are working with the Minister of Tourism, because in that component of money, there's a component that is going to address issues of social responsibility. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Nyimba.
Madam Speaker, please permit me to say this. 2016 to date, practically that is 8 years when the project started. Today we have problem with road shedding, don't have enough power, and that's the northern circuit where we still have a lot of water, Madam Speaker, in our country. Now, Minister, if procurement process is a problem, we need to start changing the way we do things. 8 years, that is sabotage, Madam Speaker, seriously. So now, Minister, is it that we have incompetent people in your ministry, or they are lacking their incompetence? So, Madam Speaker, are your people so incompetent that they cannot dictate that here where we are going there is a problem? Because, Madam Speaker, it's very embarrassing. Our nation today, that we can have people who can be looking at a project for the last 8 years and no one is trying to move. Minister, are you able to tell the nation, other than the bidder who dread the project, is there anything else? Because surely that couldn't be a problem. Or do we need us to set up a new court house to start looking at the people who are dreading the projects? Because this level of incompetence, Madam Speaker...
Honorable Member, you are now debating. Ask your question.
Oh, Madam Speaker, my question to the Minister. Minister, looking at Chishimba Falls and the water levels at that falls, looking at that... Madam Speaker, looking at...
Order, Honorable Members, let's order. Let's give him an opportunity. Honorable Member, I don't know how many questions now you have asked.
No, Madam Speaker, I just want to ask the Minister a very simple question, and very serious. I think this is not time for us to be joking when we've got a crisis in the country. We need to be serious. That level of joking should come to an end. Madam Speaker, to the Minister. Minister, if you look at the money we have, about 40 million euros seated somewhere, wherever in Europe where it's seated, then there are people who are delaying you to implement this project. Is there a way, as a nation, or as you as a ministry, we can come up and see to it that all these bottlenecks we deal with them and see to it that the project start running, other than keeping the project at all this unnecessary, stages. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Order. The Honorable Minister of Energy will answer the last question.
Madam Speaker, indeed, I don't know where to start from, but I would give hope to the honorable member that this project started in 2016. And because of the appeals and the other issues surrounding, they delayed the process. So when we came into power, I'm sure you have seen the movement. So the hope is we are doing everything possible so that this project is implemented. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Bwana Mkubwa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Minister, thank you for the answers you're providing. Honorable Minister, I wanted to find out if you are still maintaining the same scope of works at Chishimba or they've changed, because looking at time from 2016 to earmarked completion in 2027, that's 11 years, and technology keeps evolving. Are you maintaining the same scope of work, or you're coming up with a different scope of work? I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Member. Indeed, the project has delayed and it has taken time, but the consultant who was appointed in 2023 has done a review to the works and the civil works that are supposed to be done. And the progress in terms of documentation is already in progress. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kasenengwa.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. My question is very simple, straightforward, and to the point, to help my brother from Nyimba. Madam Speaker, Honorable, through you, Madam Speaker, Honorable Minister of Energy, the situation we have now, this power crisis, I want to get an official position from you as the Minister. Is it load shedding, or we can call these blackouts? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I was talking about Chishimba Falls project. But that question for the Honorable Member, what we are going through as a country is the energy crisis, which has been designed in load shedding to manage the crisis that we have. It's load shedding, it's not a blackout. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. Order, order. The Honorable Member for Mandevu.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. The people of Mandevu would like to understand. The contract was awarded in 2016, and the works stalled in 2019 due to the appeal by the losing consultant. What was the condition in the contract of the period to appeal the project? I'm looking at the time that it took to stall in 2019. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Member. Like I stated, Madam Speaker, the loser appealed to ZPPA, and the ZPPA have got procedures on how to respond or to attend to the complainant. So that is the process which has caused this delayment. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Chadiza.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Minister, it's not very clear of what was happening between 2016 and 2019. Because appealing against an award is within a short period of time. Now we're talking about 3 years, which means the contract was in operation And after 3 years, the works just stalled. So people of Jadiza would want to find out the real reason of what caused the works to stall. And they would want to even find out what was the mode of executing this project. Because it's not very clear. We were talking about a consultant. Who was the contractor who was executing the civil works? Madam Speaker, I thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, honorable members. I see people keeps on going around on the same. I think you must get it very clear that when the loser launched an appeal to ZPPA, that is in 2018, 2017. So, yes, you should listen first. So what happened is the loser tendered, appealed to ZPPA. And the ZPPA had to take their processes. Thereafter, this same project was to be retendered. And when it is retendered, you know the process is how it takes. In ZPPA, sometimes we go 1 year, people are just going through the processes. That's why you see this government is working around the clock so that the regulations that govern ZPPA are shortened so that we don't delay any project. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
We seem to be going in circles. The last question will be from the Honorable Member for Nalolo.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, thank you for your response. My question is, how many times was this project procured from 2011 from 2016 to 2018? How many times was it procured? The appeal you are talking about is for which procurement, if the procurement was more than once?
The Honorable Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The procurement took place twice. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Order. At least today you are asking questions, so we make progress. Next question, the Honorable Member for Pemba.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for giving this opportunity. Question 19.
The Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Honorable Amwata asks government what measures the government is taking to promote irrigation schemes countrywide, and B, whether the government has any plans to create a national irrigation agency, C, if so, when the plans will be implemented, and D, if there are no such plans, why? Honorable Speaker, our answers are as follows. A, government is undertaking a number of activities to promote the development of the irrigation subsector in the country. Among them, the development of the Irrigation Master Plan for Zambia, aiming at providing an economic model for investment in irrigated agricultural production in Zambia from 2024 to 2030. In B, Madam Speaker.
Order. Honorable members, how are you going to listen or get the answers if we are laughing, chatting, and laughing loudly? I don't know whatever is amusing you. Let's restrain ourselves. May the Honorable Minister of Agriculture continue.
In B, Madam Speaker, currently the government has no plans to create a national irrigation agency. In this case, all irrigation activities are being conducted and implemented through the relevant line ministries and institutions. And C, as in B above, government has no such plans. And as to why, D, this is because the current institutions have been able to sufficiently address challenges in the sector. Government will only consider establishing other mechanisms if failures are identified in the present implementation arrangements. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. Supplementary questions. The Honorable Member for Pemba.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I would like to know if there's any allocation specifically for irrigation.
The Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
The answer is a very loud yes, Madam Speaker. In fact, within the $300 million World Bank support, there's a very big amount there for irrigation. And as the Honorable Member will know, I was very close to his area a few weeks ago, where we are looking at utilizing some of those funds to revamp the irrigation schemes that were left idle for some time. And in a number of cases, Madam Speaker, we have already commissioned a couple of dams, both as Minister of Agriculture and also our colleagues in the Ministry of Water Development. So yes, there is a substantial amount of money for irrigation, Madam Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kantonshi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for your response. And I'm happy that you have mentioned the World Bank funds worth $300 million, and part of it is to support irrigation schemes. Owing to the importance of this exercise, could you explain to us, the members of Parliament, why the uptake for this fund under the World Bank has been extremely low? The World Bank report is now suggesting that only about between 5 and 8% of the funds is what your ministry has been able to consume, when your ministry is fully aware of the scale of challenges that these irrigation systems that we are looking for so dearly in the country to promote agriculture all year round. So I would like to know why your uptake has been so low. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
I'm grateful, Madam Speaker, and I would like the honorable members to appreciate that the way the money from the World Bank works is that you have to work on an activity called a deliverable, then report that you have worked on it. Only then does it kick another amount to be given to you. So it's not like we have the pot of money and we are able to just say this goes to irrigation, this goes to farm block, this goes to that. We have to show proof. And, Madam Speaker, there is an arrangement where there has to be an independent verifier. Only then do you get the other. And that is why it is called P4R, payment for result. That has got its own delays. And further, Madam Speaker, this money was not given to us to say, here's the 300 million, start using it. No, you have to go through that process and then it is released to you. That process and then it is released to you. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Nyimba.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, is this the same $300 million you mentioned in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, or 2023? Or this is a different 300 million? Because in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, between 2022 and 2023, you said there was 300 million that was supposed to be spent for irrigation in our farm blocks and farm schemes. It is the same or it's a different one? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
The answer is yes, Madam Speaker. And let me again inform the Honorable Member. These funds, for example, right now, we are looking at doing Lundazi Road using the Millennium Challenge funds. Whilst we started talking about it last year, the funds are only going to be released next year. So when we are talking about these programs, it's not that the money has come. This fund only came towards the mid of last year. So yes, it is the same fund. I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Mamba. Sorry, Pemba.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, may I know whether this program is biased to some regions? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Agriculture. I don't know if you got the question. Okay.
I want to believe that the last part he said, is it biased to some regions? No, 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 it is not. It is not biased to any particular region, and it is open, but there are plans and programs which we have to follow with the funds. In other words, like I was recently in your area commissioning dams from this same fund, because that dam was already on a program, it was being worked on. So it is not particular in any region. I've got a few dams I'm going to commission next week or so in Western Province. So as the works are completed, we go to that region and work on them. These are programs which have been laid down already. I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kaumbwe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, it is a welcome move to create a national irrigation master plan. Now, my question is, this national irrigation master plan, which entity is government going to use to create the national irrigation master plan, considering that government is not considering to set up an irrigation agency? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Maybe a point of correction. I think I made it very clear here that we are not considering creating an irrigation agency, at least not yet. And my answer was quite clear. I can share with you. In terms of how or who will do the irrigation master plan, it could be tendered, and we do also have experts within the ministries who could work with the institution that could be appointed to do the consultancy for irrigation plan. I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kalavo Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thought my question was answered when the Honorable Member for Pemba was asking about whether there are regions which are meant for this irrigation or these funds. And the minister's response was that no, 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 no. But further response indicates to me that this money is, in brackets, is designated to some areas. Honorable Minister, if there is no discrimination, there is no selection, this program for irrigation, how can it find itself? How can Kalabo District benefit from this if it is not, there's no discrimination of any nature? How can it find itself in Kalabo? Because in Kalabo, we also have people who need that irrigation. We have smallholder farmers who need that irrigation. There was that part where they were saying people must apply, they have applied, there's nothing. So, how can they fit in this? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me answer that question in two. The first part, Madam Speaker, is the honorable members in the House here should know that under the Sustainable Agriculture Financing Facility, there is, yes, the SAF, the credit window, there is an element for irrigation. So, for example, if the honorable member for Kalau wanted a borehole, solar-powered, for him to irrigate his field, we are giving under SAF up to 500,000 kwacha for such an establishment. And this is across the country. That's why I use the term like it is not consigned to a particular region. It is open for all potential beneficiaries in the country. To get back to this money, Madam Speaker, for example, in each province, there is a farm block. In Western Province, for example, the farm block is in Kalumwange. We are going to make sure that there is some water source in that farm, collected, harvested, a dam, and that will be a benefit for the people around there. But maybe it could not be in the area where the honorable member comes from. It could be more in Kaoma, more in the surrounding areas there. But for those who would like to have individual irrigation schemes, there are funds available to support that. And I would encourage you, let's have a chat so that I can share that information, and so to all the other members in the House. I thank you.
So, honorable members, please approach the Honorable Minister of Agriculture to see how you can access those funds for the benefit of your constituents. The Honorable Member for Kawata.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, I'll take you back. First of all, I appreciate the number of dams that you are actually commissioning, and some are coming. I'll take you back to Momboshi Dam, where we saw that most of the farmers that could have benefited through the irrigation system are actually commercial farmers. The smallholder farmers, most of them, they haven't benefited. So I wanted to find out what criteria are you going to put up such that the small-scale farmer can easily access some of these implements like center pivot, and also some of these dams that they're going to put up, that they can easily access, because the challenge we have is that most of these smallholder farmers are actually failing to access what we're talking about.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me start by thanking the Honorable Member for Kawata for identifying and recognizing that the government, through the ministries concerned, is putting up a number of dams and commissioning the dams so that people can access the water. I also would like to indicate, Madam Speaker, that yes, whilst the numbers of farmers in Momboshi, small-scale farmers, are few, the water resource is there. And I think it is up to us to try and see how we can collect, we can bring together these farmers to benefit from that resource. But nationally, you would look at it, and we must be happy that, for example, the wheat production in that area has moved from 1,500 to about 5,000 tons just because of that dam. But the dam is big enough to support a number of farmers, and I'm sure the honorable member seated there is patiently listening, because we appreciate the need to support small-scale farmers. The Momboshi Dam the honorable member is talking about is extremely well articulated that it can support a larger number of small-scale farmers than it currently is. So yes, let's work together on these things so that we can have more farmers benefiting from a scheme like that one. When it comes to SAF, the issue, Madam Speaker, is the reason I'm encouraging the honorable members to participate in this and be aware of this is that this is money that is given as a loan without collateral. Therefore, there are no impediments to the small-scale farmers who would like to access this fund. SAF is basically the same as FISIP, only that you pay back. The same conditions on FISIP are the same conditions on SAF. The only difference is that on SAF, you pay back, and you pay back at 12% interest. 12% is low enough in our country. It is an affordable source of agricultural loan. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. The last question will be from the Honorable Member for Bwana Mkubwa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Minister of Agriculture, for the answers you're providing. I just wanted to make a follow-up question on the issue of the slow uptake. You've explained that you have to do certain deliverables, and that entails that when those are met, then now there's a banning of the funds, especially under the World Bank. Perhaps have you started to evaluate with the World Bank to see why the ministry is failing maybe to meet those deliverables to ensure that there's a high uptake in terms of the funds? I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
The answer is yes, maybe not necessarily with the World Bank, but more so with the Ministry of Finance. Because once we can, I think, capture the weaknesses there, it should be able to trigger the payments much faster. So I think the current issue I'm looking at is with the Minister of Finance. I thank you.
Thank you. Notice of motion, the Honorable Member for Chilubi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to move that this House urges the government to establish a national poverty data line in order to ascertain the standards of living in the country.
Thank you. Is the motion seconded?
Duly seconded by the people of Kamfinsa, Madam Speaker.
Seconded by the Honorable Member for Kamfinsa. The question is that in order to ascertain the standards of living in the country, this House urges the government to establish a poverty data line. Any debate? The Honorable Member for Chilubi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This motion is moved based on the backdrop that currently Zambia does not have a national poverty data line. And much of what we use to define who is poor in Zambia and who is not is based mainly on international instruments and the interaction with at the regional level and other international bodies, among them the UN. Madam Speaker, instruments like the SDGs and the Millennium Development Goals have been used to define who is a poor person in Zambia. Madam Speaker.
Apologies, Honorable Member for Chilubi. There is an indication for a point of order from the Honorable Member of Sesheke. What's the point of order?
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. And my apologies to a colleague who is on the floor of the House. Madam Speaker, this is my first point of order in this Parliament. It borders on the procedure on how a unicameral and a bicameral parliament should operate its business. Madam Speaker, this point of order is compelling that I feel it's important that it's tabled on the floor of this House so that we can all together be on the same page. Madam Speaker, I am aware that the standing orders that we are using now indicate that during this session, the budgetary session, the House will be suspended, and thereafter, as we resume, only one member per political party will be allowed to debate the budget. I find this quite disturbing, Madam Speaker, owing to the fact that our Parliament is predominantly a unicameral Parliament, which entails that we only have one legislative chamber, unlike a bicameral, where you have the provincial assemblies where all matters regarding the challenges in that particular province are tabled at the provincial assembly and thereafter in the National Assembly. I'm at pain, Madam Speaker, representing the people of Sesheke and belonging to a very big political party, the United Party for National Development, which has got members in almost every province of this country, that how, in the interest of the people that have voted me to come and represent them here, can my people of Sesheke be represented by, for example, a colleague from Kankoyo, a colleague from Muchinga, and so on and so forth. Madam Speaker, with the foundation that I've laid, Madam Speaker, I seek your serious ruling to critically look at this matter, owing to the fact that our Parliament, vis-à-vis what is being introduced, is completely out of dimension. I seek your serious ruling, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member for Sesheke. The issue that you have raised borders on administrative issue. So it's a matter that can be dealt with administratively, cannot qualify to be raised as a point of order. So that is my ruling. Can we make progress? The Honorable Member for Chiruvi, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before a point of order was raised, I was trying to establish that Zambia does not have a poverty datum line. And mainly, the poverty datum lines that we borrow are based on purchasing power parity, and I did mention which international bodies and regional bodies we borrow from. Madam Speaker, I want also to attend to the question of poverty. I do not want to go into the definition of poverty because there are different definitions of poverty, and there is no agreement on which one is the right definition. Madam Speaker, I just want to approach this matter with the concept that there is absolute poverty, there is also relative poverty. This motion does not intend to lump the poverty datum line on relative poverty, but Madam Speaker, I'm getting feedbacks from the Minister of Youth, who is making a lot of noise and it's disturbing me.
Oh, honorable members, let's listen to the debate. Please, let's not interrupt the person who is holding the floor.
Madam Speaker, the poverty datum line that we are trying to propose that Zambia should carry on is the one which is going to be based on absolute poverty because of its universality in terms of application, and it applies to the different strata of the population of Zambia, that being urban populations, peri-urban populations, as well as the rural populations. Madam Speaker, I do take note that mainly people that have been defining poverty mainly base it on physiological needs, deprivation of the physiological needs of human beings. But I think I also need to underscore the reality that the rich are only existing because of the existence of the poor, and vice versa. The poor exist because the rich exist, and meaning that there is a codependency condition that encourages such a scenario. Madam Speaker, at some point, Zambia in the 1980s and early 90s, we had the 80-20 theory. That was the 20% rich, the 80% poor. And I think that was not sustained also because it was not anchored on any poverty datum line. Madam Speaker, as I've already indicated, that I want to take recognizance that in view of lacking a poverty datum line, the Zambia Statistics Agency, through the Living Conditions Monitoring Survey, have been coming up with something which only resembles what should be poverty datum line. I also want to take recognizance, Madam Speaker, that the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection, JCTR, undertakes what is called basic needs and nutritional basket, which also falls far below what is called poverty datum line. Madam Speaker, I would like to say that it's tenable to have a poverty datum line in the region. We have South Africa, which has the poverty datum line, and the poverty datum line for South Africa is measured of anyone living below $55.23 as per person. In Zimbabwe, Madam Speaker, also has what it calls needs basket cost, which is at $44.67 per person, Madam Speaker. Such comparisons inspire me in making sure that when we want to distribute government services, among them social cash transfer, and those that are targeted towards the vulnerable, we should have a poverty datum line for us to have equity and fair distribution and proper identification of who is poor. Madam Speaker, I do recognize also that the issue of poverty is also connected to things like squalor, ignorance, idleness, disease burden, and social exclusion, and among other things, the economics will call it Gini coefficient, which is simply a gap between the poor and the rich. Madam Speaker, I do realize that as we talk about the poverty datum line, I have in mind those that have retired, who are called pensioners. I have in mind the orphans. I have in mind many other classes, social classes. But, Madam Speaker, when it comes to the current distribution of resources, especially for those resources that are targeting social safety net, you find that there is exclusion of some of these groups, and all because we do not have a proper poverty datum line. And mainly what is used in arriving at who qualifies and who doesn't qualify is what is called vulnerability scale, which falls short of what the requirements are. Madam Speaker, I want to also address the need for other approaches that have existed elsewhere. I know that some of the countries have embarked on a right-based approach to poverty. Some of the countries have embarked on different approaches. But the right-based approach to poverty, Madam Speaker, also is mainly ticking in countries that are called first world countries, and Zambia falls in the third world country. Madam Speaker, most of the poverty initiatives that have been embarked on, especially those that were embarked on during the Kaunda era, were meant and weighed more on the issues of structural adjustment program. Madam Speaker, if you look at the structural adjustment program, all these were imposed theories from either with the World Bank or the other Bretton Woods brothers that emanates from that particular institutions. But when we look at developing a locally driven program that should give impetus to what we need to define as poverty, we are lacking. And to me, this is purely, and I mean purely, a non-controversial motion, which involves all of us. And because unless we want to deny that poverty doesn't exist, then this motion is not relevant. But if poverty does exist, and it also helps in defining, it also helps in defining, it also helps in defining when, for instance, we have a disaster and we need to package who to benefit. We need to follow the poverty datum line as opposed to other measures. Madam Speaker, when we look at this, I also want to close my debate on deprivation. I know that most of the people have developed different items of what deprivation is, because it's on deprivation that we are going to have a framework on what should be the poverty datum line. I have in mind, Madam Speaker, a gentleman called Peter Townsend, who in 1979 developed about 12 items of what deprivation is, which is also argued that it is insufficient in looking at a framework of poverty data because it is only addressing relative poverty. Given that scenario, Madam Speaker, especially in having to arrive at a station where if we talk about poverty data line, what will result is that we have to develop a deprivation index so that we see who qualifies in Kanyama to be poor, who qualifies in Chirubi to be poor, what of Monze to be poor, such that we take a national average as opposed to this scenario that we have. Because sometimes, Madam Speaker, I do realize that one would entertain rural poverty, the other one would entertain urban poverty, and the other one would entertain peri-urban poverty. So, Madam Speaker, the station that we need to arrive at is to develop a deprivation index that should feed into a poverty data line that will help us develop the national poverty data line, for Zambia. I rest my case, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. Does the seconder wish to speak now or later?
Now, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Kamfinsa.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, may I begin by thanking the mover of the motion, Honorable Fube, Member of Parliament, for the good people of Chilubi. The people of Kamfinsa, Madam Speaker, wish to support the proposal that has been brought today regarding the need to establish a poverty datum line. And Madam Speaker, without sounding very academic, allow me first of all to indicate that Zambia has got 5 cities which are Chipata, Ndola, Kitwe, Livingstone and Lusaka. The next districts, Madam Speaker, we have 15 municipal councils. These are the smaller councils, councils like Chingola, councils like Luansha, councils like Choma. These are the next category of districts that we have. So 5 cities, 5 municipalities, and the remaining 96, Madam Speaker, these are your smaller districts, the ones that were created later on, districts like Kanchivia. Now, Madam Speaker, when you look at those statistics, 5 districts, 15 municipalities, and 96 town or rural councils, Madam Speaker, that tells you the problem that Honorable Fube wants us. Because when it comes to allocating resources for development, Madam Speaker, the problem comes in. Because if I'm receiving 30 million Kwacha constituency development fund in Kamfinsa, which is a constituency in a city, Madam Speaker, the same amount of money has to be taken to a district such as Kalabo. Now, Madam Speaker, I'm standing here and I'm asking myself, what are we trying to achieve in terms of interventions? Because if both districts, Madam Speaker, are getting the same amount of money, if the same constituencies in 2 different districts, one is a peri-urban district, one is a peri-urban constituency, Madam Speaker, then it creates a problem. And what Honorable Fube is basically asking this August House today is to establish what is called a poverty datum line. A poverty datum line, Madam Speaker, which speaks to the issue of how much resources should we take to a specific government program. Because, Madam Speaker, if we are going to stand here and agree that everyone should get the same amount of money, a district in town and a district in the rural setup, then, Madam Speaker, we are not resolving any problem. If the people of Mushindamo, who require resources for development, are getting the same amount of development, same amount of resources, Madam Speaker, as a constituency in a city, then, Madam Speaker, the question is, we literally have a wrong criteria to establish how we should apportion our resources. What Honorable Fube is asking this August House is purely an administrative issue which does not require even an amendment of any piece of legislation. Madam Speaker, we are not saying next week Parliament should sit here and come up with a law to prescribe what a datum line is. The MP for Chilubi, coming from a rural constituency, recognizing that Zambia has got 96 rural councils in Zambia, that unfortunately are getting the same equalization fund. When an urban setup gets a 1.5 million kwacha
equalization fund, which is maybe Kitwe, Chibombo gets the same amount of money. Madam Speaker, what are we trying to resolve? We are not resolving the problems of our people. And I stand here, Madam Speaker, supporting the proposal that is coming from Chilubi for two simple principles, Madam Speaker. Principle number one, you measure the levels of poverty, not the levels in Siavonga, through a datum line. Then you go to another setup. You go to establish the poverty. That is that equipped with information. Information for this particular constituency. Madam Speaker, in the absence of a poverty datum line, what we'll be doing here, Madam Speaker, is what we've been doing all along. We sit here, we approve a national budget, we simply say we have 156 constituencies, Kamfinsa gets 30 million, Kasempa gets 30 million. Meanwhile, Madam Speaker, the poverty levels are different. Meanwhile, Madam Speaker, the poverty datum line in its actual sense, not what the United Nations is telling us, what our officers are going to establish, Madam Speaker, justifies why our resources are not yielding the right results. If we are going to allocate resources, whether it's social cash trust, Madam Speaker, whether it's a community development ministry park for our farmers, differently based on the datum line, Madam Speaker, what we'll be doing here is doing justice. We will simply be prescribing solutions based on the district, based on the constituency, based on the poverty levels in each particular district. So Honorable Fube does not bring a very controversial topic here today. He's simply saying, can we come up with a different way of allocating resources to our people? Should we give our people the same amount of money simply because there are 116 districts in Zambia? Are we going to be allocating resources, Madam Speaker, simply because we have 156 constituencies? Kasempa and Kamfinsa should get the same amount of money. Nkana and Kabwata should get the same amount of money. Kasama and Lukasha should get the same amount of money. Madam Speaker, the answer is no. And this is why for me today, as I stand, Madam Speaker, I believe that we can begin looking at resource allocation differently. The starting point is to establish a poverty datum line. Once we have a poverty datum line, Madam Speaker, we'll see a situation improving. Madam Speaker, have you ever wondered why people have to move from the village to come into Lusaka? Why people prefer to leave the village and come into Kitwe? The simple reason is that there are social amenities in cities. The simple reason, Madam Speaker, is that we have a university teaching hospital in a city. The simple reason, Madam Speaker, is that Ndola has a teaching hospital. So someone believes the social amenities are available. Now, here we are today, Madam Speaker. We have an opportunity to say, can we start allocating resources? Can we start designing policies based on the nature of the district we are dealing with? And today, Madam Speaker, the starting point is to establish a poverty datum line. We know the poverty levels in our constituencies. Then, Madam Speaker, the solutions will be different. The people of Kamfinsa, Madam Speaker, on account of limitation of time, do support the proposal that is coming from the people of Chilubi. And I beg to submit, and I thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further debate? The Honorable Member for Shiwangando.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to make a few comments on the motion moved by the Honorable MP for Chilubi and seconded by the Honorable MP for Kamfinsa. Madam Speaker, in simpler terms, what the Honorable MP for Chilubi is seeking is for the government to have a policy which will be like a tool that should be used to measure poverty at different levels. Madam Speaker, simply put, when we are sick, we go to the hospital in order for that to be checked diagnosed, and for the doctors to ascertain what they need to do to you as a patient is first of all to do various tests. If it's malaria, what sort of malaria are you suffering from? What kind of dosage are you supposed to be given in order for you to be treated? So this too is what should be used in order for government to make informed interventions at different levels. Let's talk about these social safety net programs that are being extended to different communities. Social cash transfer, food pack. What is informing these interventions and the quantum of these interventions in the absence of an effective tool which should be used to assess what is obtaining on the ground? So indeed it's timely, because government may be putting interventions in place and not achieving meaningful results because the interventions are not informed by what is exactly obtaining on the ground, and to ensure that these interventions are speaking to each other. Let's talk about social cash transfer and the people that are eligible to access the funds. You find that even as we speak now, there are so many people that feel left out in the communities, who feel that they are eligible to be beneficiaries, but yet they are not on the program. It shows you that there are some gaps that need to be sealed by having instruments such as what the Honorable Member is proposing in form of a poverty data line. We have farmers that are poor but viable, who can contribute significantly to the food security of this country. Some of them have been on the program called Farmer Input Support Program, FISIP. And they are being weaned out before they can even be able to sustain themselves. You imagine they are being weaned off this program and consigned to poverty that will be permanent, because they have got nowhere to start from in terms of how they should secure themselves food-wise, and in turn earn a living through what they produce. So these are very critical interventions that need to be implemented with informed parameters. The other time we were interacting with the Minister of Community and Social Welfare, when she was talking about the changing of how they are now paying people social cash transfer. There were decisions that were made where people who live in areas where there is no network, for example, were compelled to start receiving their social safety net programs on their phones. And this has proved to be a challenge. Again, that shows you that when we are putting these interventions in place, we have not gotten to the ground to appreciate what is obtaining on the ground. And poverty is at different levels, Madam Speaker. Here you may see honorable members wearing suits. They could be suffering another form of poverty in terms of mangoes. So if they are not eating mangoes, Madam Speaker, as you always provide, you will see them wallowing in this poverty, which needs to be assessed by a proper data line. So poverty is at different levels, Madam Speaker. That's what I'm saying. We need to have, Madam Speaker, you know what I'm talking about. So this motion, Madam Speaker, is not controversial, and it deserves to be supported because government has the responsibility to look after everybody, including the poor. And so you can only look after this poorest of the poor by knowing you cannot deal with a problem whose quantum, whose scale you don't understand and you don't appreciate. So it's very important that we put these tools in place so that at all different levels of our communities, we are able to assess. And informed by the factors on the ground, then you can do the interventions that are required. because it is always said that health and food security are inseparable. You find children suffering from malnutrition, they will require health access. Why? Because it's just poor diet that is causing our children to be stunted, for example. So all these are things that we need to deal with from informed position. E.g., Dundumwezi, Madam Speaker. When you see him slender is losing weight, you have to find out what is happening. So, Madam Speaker, with these few remarks, I wish to support the motion moved by the Honorable MP for Chilobi.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Member for Shiwangandu need not worry. The rain season around the corner and there will be a lot of mangoes. The Honorable Member Tambo.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. The motion at hand is really not controversial as it has been put by the mover, the seconder, and the Honorable Member of Parliament for Shiwangandu. Indeed, Madam Speaker, in this country, we have money that is spent on research. And if you go to the statistics office, you discover that there's a lot of research that has been done in this country, but we don't put to good use this kind of research that we do. Madam Speaker, if you are doing management courses, there is a topic called decision making. And Madam Speaker, for you to be good at decision making, you need to have information. Information that should be able to outline where you are going, where you're coming from, and what is supposed to be done. And for one to make those decisions, there must be some kind of a base on which they are pronouncing their decisions. Madam Speaker, in this country, we are still called a developing country, a third world country. If you look at our poverty levels and the people that are supposed to be called the rich and the poor, you discover that it is becoming slightly difficult for most people to make decisions. Here we are in this country, under the FISI program, we only have about 3 million people against a structure of almost about, is it 1 million? Thank you, 1 million people, against a population of about 20 million. Madam Speaker, this decision was arrived at not because people did enough research on how much poverty levels we have, or who is supposed to be considered poor to benefit from this. You would find that because of not making proper decision, not having enough information as who is supposed to be called a poor person, not having indicators to show you, to say if a person is living under these conditions, it means they are poor, or their poverty level is at this level. And I like the way the previous speaker or debater was making it out, that poverty is at different levels. Indeed, we must have indicators to show that if a person is living under these circumstances, this is what it means. So, for me, this datum line, if we have it in this country, it will show, it will definitely indicate that in this area, what we need to do as a country is in this manner. And Madam Speaker, even when we are receiving donations as a nation, like for example, the way we are receiving maize or grain today, yes, it can be distributed everywhere, but you discover that there are certain people really who don't even have the means to just even go and receive that same cold maize, because they are even unable to walk. They cannot even manage to push themselves to anywhere. So there should be a difference in terms of consideration. So this datum line will bring to light what most of our people need to understand or need to know. For example, Western Province might be considered to be the poorest provinces in this country. But, Madam Speaker, if you went there, you discover that, in fact, certainly people in Eastern Province might be more poor than people in Western Province. Because today, if you compare the people of Chitambo, who are having some gold, you cannot compare them to the people of Bangweur, for example, who are fishing every day. So, Madam Speaker, the datum line, if it was agreed to and the policy is driven forward, it will certainly help us to make informed decisions, and these decisions will benefit our people in this country. Madam Speaker, I thought I should add those few words. I thank you.
Thank you very much. There are two in the... Is there anybody in opposition? Because we've heard the people in support. The Honorable Member for Skongo.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to add a word on the motion on the floor of the House. I would like to thank my colleagues' motion for us to come up with a poverty datum line. But I think I want to start my debate by mentioning the fact that poverty is very dynamic, and that's why I think the mover of the motion mentioned that it's very difficult to arrive at a common definition that can be agreed by everyone else. But to talk about us coming up with a poverty datum line, I think I don't think that is really necessary as a country, and the reason is very simple. A poverty datum line is simply an arbitrary line that separates the rich and the poor. But in most cases, you really want to determine, if you want to define absolute poverty, then that's when we talk about poverty datum line. But I think as a country, we already have something that is already speaking to what the members who has moved this motion is trying to do. We have what is known as the living conditions monitoring survey that is done on a regular basis. And this survey tries to gather information or data pertaining the living conditions that are affecting our people in this country. So whether you're talking about poverty in terms of food security, you're talking about poverty in terms of water, you're talking about poverty in terms of maybe roads and so on and so forth. I think that information is gathered during this period when we are gathering the living conditions monitoring survey. Now, if you want to, the other issue that I had being brought on board was the issue of, for example, the CDF. We want to make sure that CDF is given not as a uniform amount, but disaggregated into provinces, constituencies in terms of poverty. But again, don't forget that we already have something on those lines. When you are measuring poverty, those that have done social sciences, you agree with me that we look at poverty in terms of urban and rural. And the reason is very simple again. There are very different segments or issues or factors that you can look at in terms of urban poverty and rural poverty. So it also speaks to the reason why